11-year-old Audrii Cunningham is still missing. The massive search to find her continues this morning near Lake Livingston.
This is the stuff that you see on TV, and you wonder, you can only imagine what the family and the parents are going through, and there's not words for it.
Through tears, Cassie Matthews, the mother of 11-year-old Audrii, pleaded for help finding her missing daughter tonight.
She was allegedly dropped off at her bus stop, and later on we come to learn that she never even made it on the bus.
There are so many layers to this story, starting with the case prosecutors are building now. And it's hard to fathom. Don Steven McDougal was a family friend, a person even trusted to live in a camper behind the home Audrii shared with her father's side of the family. McDougal's criminal history goes back more than 2 decades. Just last summer, police say he stabbed a man he did not know who was helping him jump a car battery. And tonight we are hearing also from one of McDougal's old co-workers who says McDougal attacked him when he threw him out of his home 14 years ago.
Question: what distinguishes a good parent from a bad parent? This age-old question has been debated for decades, if not centuries, yet there's still not a clear answer. That said, many states in the U.S. try to address when parents and guardians could and should be held legally responsible for negligent actions. Some common examples of negligence would be failure to secure dangerous items, such as weapons. But then there's this one: failure to protect the child from physical or emotional harm from another child, animal, or other unknown threat. And this is the very thing that many people are calling into question, whether the parents or guardians for Audrii Cunningham should or could be held responsible for her tragic loss. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about the Audrii Cunningham case, I will give a brief overview of the case. The morning of Thursday, February 15th started like every other morning for the Cunningham family. 11-year-old Audrii lived with her father, Joshua Cunningham, and her grandmother, Tabitha, while her mother, Cassie Matthews, lived elsewhere as the couple was divorced. Also with the Cunninghams lived a man named Don Steven McDougal. He was friends with Audrii's father, Joshua, and he lived in a camper behind the Cunningham property. The initial story was that Audrii got ready for school and headed out to wait for the bus at 7 a.m. Later that evening, Audrii's grandmother and father began to get worried because Audrii didn't come home after school. An Amber Alert was issued and the hunt for Audrii began. Neighbors would say that they usually saw Audrii on her way walking to the bus stop with a dog, but that didn't seem to happen on Thursday morning. In fact, apparently, a family friend was supposed to drop Audrii off at the bus stop. In the past, if Audrii was late for the bus, this person would often drive Audrii to the bus stop. At the time, investigators would not reveal who Audrii was supposed to get a ride with because they feared it would compromise their investigation. Then it was later discovered that the school claimed that Audrii not only wasn't at school that day, but she never even got on the bus in the morning. Now, Cassie, Audrii's mother, was truly sick with worry at this point, obviously, because her daughter was missing, but she had information which made her think that she knew for sure who was last with Audrii. See, just hours before Audrii's disappearance, Cassie, who had very limited contact with her daughter because of a custody order, was texted by Don Steven, that close friend of Audrii's father who lived on the property in a camper. The texts show that Don Steven was claiming he wanted to arrange a meetup between the mother and daughter since they rarely ever saw each other. On the day before she went missing, these few text messages were exchanged. She replies, "That's asking for trouble and setting me up for failure." And Steven replies, "Not at all." Mom says, "I do not in any way need to be set up to lose my child even more." Oh, that's heartbreaking to read now. Lucky would lose it if he knew. "And this is what she asked you to do?" He replies, "I'm your daughter's favorite person, and she will not tell." Mom says, "Or what if you all maybe talked about her to see me?" He replies, "She wants to meet you. I told her I am on your team. I will do what I can." Mom says, "I want to meet her too, but if this comes back on me bad in any way, I can lose her forever and I would kill you and then myself, man. No threat, but a promise." He says it would not. As long as no one says anything about it being set up, no one would even know. And she won't say anything to them. Mom says, "There is a park down the road from my house. Would that be okay? And you and Justin would have to sit nearby and," redacted, "or pretend to do. You can listen if you need to, but for my protection as well, I couldn't be alone." I guess she means because of the custody order. He says, "I mean, Justin can walk around the park and we can talk to you." Mom replies, "This whole thing scares me and that's fine." And then he replies, like, FR. I don't know if that means for real, for real. Mom says, "What has she been asking?" Steven says, "Sweetie, I am as straightforward as it comes. If I was just talking to you to try, I would have tried." And then she says, "Touché, I will give you that." He says, "She asked me if I ever talked to you and if you were as bad as they say you are." Mom replies, "Just came off wrong, upset me." "Wow, as bad as they say. What did you say?" Steven says, "Oh yeah, they have made it look like you're just horrible. I told her that you are doing good and are fun to hang out with." And Mom says, "When did she ask this?" Steven says, "She asked me yesterday going to school." And then Mom says, "I'm surprised she thought about me." Ugh. "She's scared to see me because of the reaction, huh? I mean, didn't you say they kept her inside for a month after I seen her that day at Justin's mom's?" And Steven replies, "She does all the time." Yes, exactly. Yes, she is still not allowed outside by herself in the evening. They told her that you're in the woods. She is confused about the situation, but I told her that you are not hiding in the woods, but that we talk. And then this kind of made Mom, upset and, just kind of like, what's wrong with him? Is he on drugs or stressed? Has mental health been thinking that I'm going to steal her in the night or something? I live in the woods behind his mom's house. That's some serious crazy stuff. Blah, blah, blah. So that is really the only text messages that I saw. He's definitely manipulating the mother. It almost seems like maybe he was going to try to frame her. Like, he was going to do whatever he was going to do and then make it look like the mother did something to her. I don't know, just a thought. Now, Cassie's statement the day after Audrii went missing read, "Last night, Don Steven messaged me trying to convince me to come alone to the park without my fiancé around the corner from my home to meet up with him and see my daughter. He insisted Audrii didn't like my fiancé and she doesn't even know him. Red flags are flying high to me at this point, but I play along with the idea in hopes to get my daughter in my sight and hands after school so that I could call her father myself to come get her from this man." Now, just a day into the search, on Friday, February 16th, investigators began to hone in at a lake called Lake Livingston Dam, which was actually several miles away from Audrii's home. Investigators wouldn't reveal much information initially, but Cassie, Audrii's mother, revealed that investigators told her they possibly had found Audrii's backpack in that area, but no sign of Audrii. Shortly after this information was released, police revealed that Don Steven, who went by Steven, was in fact a suspect in the disappearance of Audrii. And as it turns out, this guy was well known in the area to be a pretty shady individual.
I opened the door up and told him he needed to leave, and he come at me with the knife, and I had my shotgun, and I hit him in the face with it and shut the door on him.
It also turns out Steven had been in jail 7 times before. In 2008, he admitted to doing something wrong involving an 11-year-old girl in Brazoria County near Houston. Originally set for trial in June 2008, Steven later admitted guilt to lesser charges in September 2008, leading him to a 2-year prison term. He was also sentenced to 3 years in 2003 for assaulting a public servant in Liberty County and to 4 years in 2010 for a violent attack with a deadly weapon in Harris County, where Houston is. However, somehow, despite all of this, Steven got out of prison in September 2022 after serving time for using a vehicle without permission in Liberty County. There are also now other child victims coming out and speaking about their experience with Don Stevens when they were young.
Back in 2007, the young victim told police he crawled into bed with her and tried to remove her pants. He did not have to register as a sex offender as part of the plea. The victim is in her 20s now, and Audrii's murder is hitting her hard.
I'll never forget his face after that.
Carissa Davis would like nothing more than to forget Don McDougal's face.
I know he's a nasty man.
And what he did to her one night in 2007 when she was 10 years old. She was at her uncle's Brazoria County house for a family gathering. McDougal's sisters were family friends.
And he came into the room that me and my cousin were sleeping in.
Davis says McDougal yanked her cousin from their bed, then got into bed with her.
Tried to take down my pants, and I immediately jumped up at that moment. I remember looking at him and saying, "Do you know how old I am?"
Davis raced for the door with McDougal in tow.
He grabbed me, and when he did, I just swung my arm and I hit him.
But now that he's been charged with Audrii Cunningham's murder, she can't help but wonder what would have happened had she not been able to fight back.
And everybody was still asleep. I mean, my uncle's backyard was woods. I mean, it could have been me.
As the search for Audrii continued, Don Steven was arrested Friday, February 16th on an unrelated charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Apparently, he allegedly stabbed a man last summer. Shockingly, he wasn't originally arrested for that charge because the stabbing victim initially identified the wrong person, leading to the arrest of the wrong man. Police would soon also discover that not only was Steven leaving a trail of evidence in these text exchanges with Cassie, Audrii's mom, but cell phone tracking also placed him at the Trinity River, as did other videos and evidence collected from that area. And sadly, just 5 days after her disappearance on February 20th, 2024, Audrii was found in Trinity River. Her body was tied to a large rock with a rope that was consistent with a rope found in Steven's dark blue Chevrolet Suburban just days earlier. Her cause of death was ruled as homicidal violence, and her manner of death has been ruled a homicide. Don Steven McDougal was then charged with capital murder in connection with her death. In the wake of this tragedy, people are asking all kinds of questions. But the biggest 2 questions are these. 1, why aren't there better systems in place to keep these types of individuals behind bars longer? And 2, why would Audrii's grandmother and father think it was a good idea to let their daughter be alone with this type of individual? We all know that when it comes to laws and the justice system, oftentimes there are loopholes just large enough for some of these people to wiggle their way out of. But what needs to change so that this type of thing doesn't happen again? This guy didn't just have 1 or 2 offenses here. This is like a long list. And from what I'm hearing and what is coming out now, there are even more victims of this guy that maybe didn't speak up at the time. And while I'm in no way victim shaming, I do understand the fear that surrounds reporting these types of individuals, as it could lead to retaliation against you or whoever reports it. I get that. But as hard as it is, I believe that we all have a responsibility to report something if we are victimized by someone. The same goes for if you witness something or you find something to be suspicious or potentially dangerous for someone else, especially other children. This is the only thing there is. The only way to build a case against somebody is to take these little clues and statements and report them. Because after a while, these little clues help to build a much bigger picture that could potentially save lives one day. But that said, I do believe that there will be some new laws or reform that will come from this incident, and I am sure we will see that very, very soon. But as for the question of why Audrey's grandmother and father would have let her around this violent person, the question really is, how much did they really know about his background? Now, over the weekend, Audrey's family released a statement. It appears it was written by Audrey's father and grandmother, and the statement is really rubbing some people the wrong way. And it reads, 1 week ago on Thursday the 15th of February 2024, Audrii Danielle Cunningham was lured under false pretenses, which led to a senseless act of violence occurring and ultimately to her death. Tragically, Audrey's death occurred at the hands of a monster we thought was a friend only 10 days after Audrey's 11th birthday. Audrii Cunningham was a charismatic, beautiful, talented, and kind young lady. She loved singing, dancing, reading, and painting. She was even learning the skills of a tattoo artist. Most of all, caring for and playing with animals was her passion. Audrey's aspirations were to become a veterinarian or an animal trainer. Every day, Audrey was out caring for our pets and walking our dogs. She would even walk the dogs of neighbors in the subdivision. She touched so many lives and filled them with joy and happiness that was infectious. She had so much energy and brought a passion to everything she did. Audrey will be missed by a great many people. The Munch and Cunningham families are devastated and grieving for what happened to our little ray of sunshine, Audrey. We are being attacked and criticized on social media platforms for showing compassion and mercy to this formerly incarcerated person. But our interactions with this person were a result of our faith, which teaches us to give our fellow man a second chance. Unfortunately, the system failed us due to a loophole in the sex offender registration system. Don Steven McDougal had a history of disrespect for young female children, but it did not show up when we checked the registry before allowing him to stay in an old camper in our backyard while he tried to start a new life. Had we been aware of what we know now, this man would never have set foot on our property, much less been a part of our little girl's life. We wish to acknowledge and thank the Polk County Sheriff's Office, the Livingston Police Department, the Texas State Troopers, the Texas Rangers, the Texas State Guard, the Trinity River Authority, the FBI, and nearby county sheriff departments, and as well as thousands of volunteers, our local VFW post, and the public for helping to search for and ultimately finding the body of Audrey. Audrii Danielle Cunningham will be missed, but hopefully not forgotten, as we would like to ask legislatures and law enforcement, both locally and in Washington, D.C., to look at the loophole that prevented us from knowing that Don McDougal was a convicted sex offender. The Sex Offender Registry is a valuable tool that parents and grandparents everywhere use to keep their children safe from these violent predators. This failing of the system is a crime that we cannot allow to go overlooked. Again, we would like to thank everyone who was involved in the search for Audrey, and we hope you will do the same for others going forward. God bless y'all, and God bless the children. So that is more or less the statement made by Audrey's grandmother, Tabitha, and her father, Joshua. Now, before I say anything else, I do want to note that aside from donations going to protect children against more crimes like this, there's also a scholarship set up in Audrii's name by her school. So I'm going to leave a link down below if you would like to donate in Audrii's name. Livingston Independent School District Superintendent Dr. Brent Hawkins announced last Thursday that the Audrii Cunningham Memorial Scholarship will be included in the Green and White Scholarship ceremony held on May 7th, 2024. And Hawkins wrote, "Audrii loved school, so what better way to honor her memory than to help a student further their education." Now, I can understand, their faith telling them to give people a second chance. I understand that, and I think that's a very honorable way to be. However, it does also appear that they are blaming the system, right? And that there was this loophole in the system. And I think that has been what has rubbed many people the wrong way. Now, I guess I can see it both ways personally. I do agree that the system does need some changes, obviously, as far as stronger enforcement and maybe updates to the procedures, etc. However, my personal opinion is this in a sentence: the day that I let a system tell me who I should let my kids be around is the day I give my children to the system. Let me put it this way. I'm a divorcee. I'm a single mother, and my ex-husband and I share custody of our children. They're 8 and 10. Now, I will tell you, I don't let those babies out of my sight when they're here, and I mean it. I live in a small condo where I can either always see or hear them. And when we go to the store, I really don't let them outside of 5 feet of me at all times. Didn't used to be like that. Of course, they would go bolt off into the distance. I'd have to grab them, usually crying out of embarrassment, and, take them back to my car and abandon my cart because they're quite a handful and very embarrassing to deal with in public. But anyway, now they are older. I don't let them leave 5 feet outside of my eyesight. So as hard as it was for me to do this alone, most of the time, I rarely let my children out of my sight. Now, I've lived with the same man I've dated for 7 years. He's lived in the home with us, and I will tell you, I probably have only allowed him to be alone with the children maybe a handful of times, and they're older now at this point. I feel that as much as I trust him, I need to take control of my children myself. Now, that might be extreme for a lot of you, and a lot of you don't have anyone else to watch the children, and I get that. I'm not saying any of this to seem like I'm the perfect parent or something like that, because I am certainly not. I make tons of mistakes. It really has to do more with my distrust of everybody and my own personal anxiety issues than anything else, because I watch so much true crime. I'm always terrified that something terrible will happen to them if I'm not watching them. So it's more about that and less about trying to seem like the perfect parent. And that said, I can tell you I also understand those parents who, turn their head and 3 seconds later their child is in a gorilla's cage. Now that I can see, and I can see that happening to my kids. I used to do stuff like that as a kid. Your parent turns their head and all of a sudden you're in a different zip code. That I understand, but this type of thing is different. I have a really hard time with the idea of leaving an 11-year-old girl alone with this shifty sort of guy that had known violent tendencies with a swastika tattoo who has to live on your property to get their life together. When does that ever seem like a good idea? What would be a red flag if those aren't red flags? Help me out here, guys. Maybe I'm missing something. At what point is it the fault of the parent to miss all of these overt warning signs? Let me know what you all think about that in the comment section down below, because while I'm completely against victim shaming, this is a really interesting debate that has gotten some people very angry, saying that the guardians or parents in this case or in cases like this should be facing charges as well. But that's really all I have for today. My name is Tara Marie, and this is True Crime Matters, where we analyze and talk about everything true crime. If you found this video useful at all, please remember to subscribe. Our show is new, and we are trying to grow, so we'd be extremely thankful. Thank you so much for watching. Be careful out there.